Welcome to the Deep Dive.
Hi there.
Today we are plunging into some specific source material that you've shared with us. It interprets biblical perspectives on end times events.
Yeah, and we're focusing particularly on what these sources say about Jerusalem's role and, the signs leading up to some significant future moment.
Right. And the sources we're working with, just so everyone's clear, are excerpts from a YouTube transcript, mostly looking at Zechariah chapter 12.
That's one, yes. And the other is a passage from the Gospel of Matthew chapter 24, often called the Olivet Discourse.
Got it. So our goal here is really just to unpack the key ideas and, drill down into the specific details presented in these specific sources.
Exactly. We want to help you quickly grasp what they convey about these, let's face it, pretty complex subjects. We're guides to the material you gave us.
Okay then, let's unpack this. Where do we start? Zechariah.
Let's do it. Starting with that Zechariah 12 interpretation from the YouTube source. Jerusalem is immediately shown as a major flashpoint.
Okay. It calls it a cup of trembling for the surrounding nations.
That's the phrase. And the source is quite specific. It says surrounding nations means the Arab and Islamic world.
And it compares this cup of trembling to, what, a cup with alcohol?
Causing irrational thinking is the idea. The source even uses the term jihad as an example of nations thinking, and this is the source's word, crazy because of Jerusalem.
Wow. So the source is really framing recent history through this lens, suggesting nations around Jerusalem act irrationally because of it.
That's the interpretation presented, yes.
Yeah.
It talks about surrounding peoples being emotionally unstable. Uses the term meshuk,
Which means
something like crazy or disturbed, specifically because of their conflict with Jerusalem. But then there's another image.
Right, the burdensome stone. For all nations this time.
For all nations, yeah. And the source uses this analogy, and it gets really specific here.
Okay.
It talks about ancient times, how young men would test their strength by lifting a really heavy stone and a massa.
Like a weightlifting challenge.
Sort of. But the point was, if you tried to lift this incredibly heavy thing and failed, letting it fall back on you, you'd be severely injured.
Ouch. Okay, I see the potential analogy.
And the source connects it directly to recent history. It argues that surrounding Arab countries were severely injured when they, quote, tested themselves against Jerusalem.
In the wars like 1948, 49, 1967, 1973.
Exactly those. They lifted the stone in this view and were wounded by it. So the source sees this prophecy as having like a historical fulfillment already.
That anchors it in the past if we're looking forward. So where does the source go next? Future conflicts.
Yeah, it describes a sequence of future events, still based on that Zechariah interpretation. It talks about an invasion.
Like someone called the King of the North.
That's the term used. And the source notes this king is identified elsewhere. In other passages, it doesn't specify as Assyria.
Interesting. So it's drawing on a wider context, even if not fully detailed in the excerpt.
It seems so. This king of the north, according to the source, will overrun the land of Israel and capture Jerusalem.
Capturing Jerusalem. And the Temple Mount is mentioned specifically.
Yes, the source highlights that capturing the Temple Mount is presented as a major goal for this king.
Okay. And then what? Does he just stay there?
No, apparently an occupying force is left behind in Jerusalem, but the king of the north himself continues his campaign.
On the move. Where to?
He conquers Egypt. And the source gives a really specific reason for why.
Which is?
It says explicitly it's for financial reasons, which is
right.
Quite a specific motive to pull out of prophecy.
It really is. And the source notes, Egypt is Islamic, outside the king's domain, but has a peace treaty with Israel.
Right. The source seems impressed by the geographical and political details it finds in the text, linking them to modern realities like those treaties.
What else about this campaign? Jordan comes up too, doesn't it?
It does. The source says the king overruns North Jordan, but not the rest of Jordan.
Not the rest. Why the distinction?
The source identifies that southern part as ancient Moab, and it claims that's where a specific group, the 144,000, find refuge and protection during the tribulation. Ah, okay. So the path of conquest is linked to a place of refuge.
And it also points out that Jordan, like Egypt, has a peace treaty with Israel. Again, mapping current politics onto the interpretation.
So after this campaign through Egypt and part of Jordan,
the king of the north returns to Jerusalem. For a second siege?
A second siege. Okay, this sounds like it's leading somewhere significant.
It is. This is where the source brings in the idea of divine intervention, redemption, the second coming.
So the second siege is different because Jesus returns then.
That's exactly how the source distinguishes it. The return happens at that time.
And it even mentions a specific location.
Yes, the source links the return to Jesus standing on the Mount of Olives, and it references Zechariah 14.3 for that detail. Very specific place.
During the second siege, God steps in to protect who exactly?
The house of Judah and the inhabitants of Jerusalem. The source lists some specifics from the text.
Like what?
Like God keeping his eyes open for Judah, striking the enemy horses with terror and madness.
Terror and madness, wow. And even striking the people's horses with blindness. So the protection described is pretty dramatic, extending even to the animals.
And the people aren't just offended, they fight back.
They're empowered, according to the source's reading. The captains of Judah become like a fire basin or a fire torch.
Consuming the enemy.
Consuming the surrounding nations, yeah. Even the simplest person among them becomes like King David, the hero. And stronger ones get supernatural power. It's presented as a total turnaround.
So God actively destroys the attacking nations at this point.
That's what the source says God will seek to do, destroy all nations coming against Jerusalem then. A divine response.
Now there's something about the Holy Spirit here too, right?
Yeah.
An outpouring.
Yes, this is highlighted. When Jesus returns, there's a future outpouring of the spirit of grace and supplication, specifically on the house of David and Jerusalem's inhabitants.
And the source says this is a new outpouring, different from Pentecost.
It emphasizes that. It calls it a new outpouring, distinct from Pentecost, and it makes an interpretive leap. It sort of implies this new outpouring suggests the Holy Spirit must have departed sometime before, perhaps at an event like the rapture. That seems to be part of the underlying framework this source assumes.
Okay. That's a significant interpretive point they're weaving in. What about that quote? They will look on me whom they have pierced.
Ah, yes. The source really focuses on that. It says, and they will look on me whom they have pierced.
And the source links this to the Messiah.
It does. It even references the Talmud supposedly interpreting this figure as the Messiah. The source then draws a big conclusion from this.
Which is?
That the Messiah must be God who becomes human and is pierced. It connects Old Testament prophecy, rabbinic interpretation, and Christian belief about Jesus right there. A major theological assertion from the source.
Okay. And after all this, Jerusalem dwells safely.
That's the promise mentioned, yes. Safety afterwards. But there's one more kind of quirky detail the source picks up on about the return.
Oh, yeah. What's that?
It notes the text says God saves the tents of Judah, the country, the people outside the city first, before the inhabitants of Jerusalem, the city itself.
First. Why would the order matter?
The source offers a reason. It's so the prominence of the house of David and the city folks doesn't exalt itself over Judah, the country folks.
Seriously, to prevent envy.
Yeah, basically, yes. The source interprets it as God addressing the problem of envy in God's people, which it says is always there. It's a very human detail within the big picture, according to this source.
That is fascinating. Internal group dynamics, even then. Okay, so that covers the Zechariah source's intense focus on Jerusalem. Let's switch gears to the other source, Matthew 24, the Olivet Discourse. This gives broader signs, right?
Exactly. This passage is Jesus talking to his disciples. They've just left the temple, and they ask him basically two things.
When will the temple be destroyed?
And what are the signs of your coming and the end of the age? The source we're looking at focuses on that second question, the signs.
Okay, so what signs does Jesus list first?
Well, he starts with warnings, actually. False Christs, false prophets, deceiving many people. That's number one.
Deception is a big theme then.
Huge. Then he mentions wars and rumors of wars, but he emphasizes in the source notes this distinction that this stuff has to happen, but it's not the actual end yet.
Just the run-up.
Kind of. He also lists nation against nation, kingdom against kingdom, famines, earthquakes in various places.
A lot of turmoil.
Yes. And Jesus groups all these early signs together and calls them the beginning of the birth pains.
Birth pains, suggesting they start and then get more intense over time.
That's the usual interpretation, yeah. Like contractions, preliminary, but pointing towards something bigger.
What comes after these initial birth pains?
Then the focus shifts to persecution, specifically of his followers.
How bad does he get?
The text says they'll be delivered up to tribulation, killed, hated by all nations because of his name. It sounds pretty intense and widespread.
And this persecution has effects within the community too.
Sadly, yes. The passage says many will fall away from faith. They'll betray each other, hate each other.
Wow. Tough times.
And alongside that, it mentions again the rise of many false prophets, continuing the deception theme.
There's also something about lawlessness.
Yes, because lawlessness will be increased, the love of many will grow cold. The source text draws a direct line between the breakdown of societal order and the chilling of love and compassion.
That's quite a statement. Is there any hope mentioned amidst all this?
There is. A condition is given. Whoever endures to the end will be saved. So perseverance through it all is key.
And before the absolute end, one more sign.
A global one. This gospel of the kingdom will be proclaimed throughout the whole world as a testimony to all nations, and then the end will come. So worldwide proclamation first.
Okay, so that sets the stage. Then we get into what Jesus calls the Great Tribulation.
Exactly. And he points to a very specific sign marking this period, the abomination of desolation standing in the holy place.
The abomination of desolation, he links that to Daniel.
Yes, he does. And the text adds a little note, let the reader understand, which the source emphasizes, like, pay attention. Understanding what this is crucial. It's a key marker.
And when people see that specific sign, what do they do?
If you're in Judea at that time, the instruction is stark. Flee. Immediately. To the mountains.
No packing.
Nope. Don't go back for anything. Not from the housetop, not from the field. Just run. It implies extreme, sudden danger. Possessions mean nothing.
That sounds terrifying. Especially for some.
The passage acknowledges that. It says it will be particularly hard for pregnant women and nursing mothers during that flight.
And they should pray about the timing of the flight.
Yeah, pray it doesn't happen in winter or on the Sabbath. Practical and religious concerns, even in crisis.
How bad is this Great Tribulation period described as being?
Uniquely bad. Jesus says it will be a time of great tribulation, such as has not been from the beginning of the world until now, no, and never will be. The worst ever, and never to be repeated.
But it won't go on indefinitely.
No. The text says that period will be shortened. Cut short for the sake of the elect. Implying if it wasn't shortened, maybe nobody would survive it.
And the warnings about deception continue even during this time.
Absolutely. False Christs, false prophets will arise then, too, performing great signs and wonders, trying to mislead even the elect, if that were possible.
And Jesus says basically, I told you this would happen?
Yes, see, I have told you beforehand. Like, be prepared for this level of deception.
Okay, so after this unparalleled tribulation ends, what happens next?
Immediately after, the source text describes dramatic signs in the heavens, cosmic signs signaling the return.
Like what?
The sun will be darkened, the moon won't give light, stars will fall from heaven, the powers of the heavens will be shaken, huge, unmistakable celestial events.
And then the return itself.
Highly visible, unmistakable, the sign of the Son of Man will appear in heaven. All tribes of the earth will mourn.
Mourn?
Yes, mourn as they see the Son of Man coming on the clouds of heaven with power and great glory.
So it's not subtle.
Not at all. The source mentions comparisons Jesus uses, like lightning flashing from east to west, or vultures gathering around a carcass. Things you just can't miss. Sudden, obvious.
And then he gathers his followers.
His elect, yes. From the four winds, gathered by angels with a loud trumpet call.
How are people supposed to know when all this is getting close? Is there, like, a way to gauge the timing?
Jesus uses a parable, the fig tree.
The fig tree.
Yeah. When its branches get tender and put out leaves, you know summer is near. Similarly, he says, when you see all these things starting to happen, know that he is near, right at the doors. The signs indicate the season is changing.
So the signs tell you it's close.
They tell you the season is here. Then there's that statement, this generation will not pass away until all these things take place. Which, sparked a lot of discussion.
I can imagine. And he stresses his words are certain.
Absolutely. Heaven and earth will pass away, but his words won't. Yeah. But then comes the crucial part about timing.
Right. After laying out all these signs, sequences, what does he say about the exact day and hour?
This is key, and the source highlights it. Concerning that day and hour, no one knows, not even the angels of heaven, nor the Son, but the Father only.
Not even the Son. Only the Father knows the exact time.
That's what the text explicitly states. Despite all the signs pointing to the season, the precise moment is unknown to anyone but the Father.
So, how are people supposed to live then?
Yeah.
If the signs are there, but the timing is secret.
Well, that leads right into the final part of the passage. It shifts to how to live in expectation, watchfulness, faithfulness.
Okay. How does it illustrate this?
It compares the time right before the return to the days of Noah.
Noah, before the flood.
Exactly. People were just living life. Eating, drinking, getting married, totally unaware of the judgment coming until the flood hit and swept them away.
So life will seem normal right up until the very end.
That's the implication. It won't necessarily feel like the end times for everyone just going about their daily business. It also uses illustrations of sudden separation. Two men in a field working together. One is taken, one is left. Two women grinding grain together. One taken, one left. Sudden, unexpected, right in the middle of normal activity.
Which leads to the instruction.
Stay awake, therefore, and be ready. That's the repeated command.
Why? Because you don't know when.
Precisely. For you do not know on what day your Lord is coming,
Yeah.
and the Son of Man is coming at an hour you do not expect.
The source mentioned an analogy Jesus used about a thief.
Right. If a homeowner knew when a thief was coming, they'd stay awake and protect the house. Since you don't know the hour of the Lord's return, you have to always be ready. You can't just prepare at the last minute, because you won't know when that is.
So how do you stay ready? What does that look like practically?
The passage uses another parable, the faithful and unfaithful servant. It contrasts two ways of waiting for the master's return.
Okay, describe the faithful one.
He's called wise, reliable. He's been given a job, taking care of the other servants, giving them food at the proper time.
And when the master comes back.
He's found just doing his job diligently. And he gets rewarded. Put in charge of all the master's property. Big promotion.
And the unfaithful one.
Well, he thinks, the master's taking a long time. He gets complacent, maybe arrogant.
What does he do?
Starts mistreating the other servants,
Yeah.
beating them, and spends his time eating and drinking with drunkards, basically abusing his position and neglecting his duties because he thinks there's no accountability coming soon.
But the master does come back.
Yes, unexpectedly. On a day he doesn't expect, at an hour he doesn't know, catches him completely off guard, misbehaving.
And the consequences?
Severe. The text says he'll be cut in pieces and assigned a place with the hypocrites, where there's weeping and gnashing of teeth. It's a very stark warning.
So the message is, don't be like that guy.
Pretty much. The connection for you, the listener, for anyone waiting, is the vital importance of living faithfully now. Doing the tasks you've been given. Being prepared like that reliable servant.
Because the timing is unknown, and being caught unprepared is disastrous, according to this text.
Exactly. Readiness comes through ongoing faithfulness, not last-minute panic.
And you mentioned the source material ended with some more personal notes.
Just briefly, yes. At the very end of the provided text, there were some devotional-type phrases. Expressing a desire to serve Jesus until he comes, and then serve him in eternity, adds a note of personal hope and purpose.
Right. Okay. So we've covered a lot. We've gone through these sources. The Zechariah one, focusing intensely on Jerusalem, future wars, the King of the North, divine rescue.
And the Matthew 24 source, giving that broader sweep of signs, deception, wars, persecution, cosmic events, the Great Tribulation, the visible return.
And then pivoting hard into the unknown timing and the need for constant readiness and faithfulness, illustrated by those parables.
It's quite a journey through these specific interpretations.
It really is. So here's a final thought, something maybe to chew on, based purely on the tension we've seen within these sources themselves. Given that these sources lay out so many detailed signs, specific sequences, future conflicts, this tribulation period, right up to the cosmic events, how do you reconcile all that detail about what is supposed to happen with the absolute explicit statement that no one, not angels, not even the Son, knows the actual day or hour, only the Father?
The tension between the detailed what and the unknown when.
Exactly. How does that tension shape the final instruction? Why the emphasis on just stay awake, be ready through faithful service right now, rather than, say, focusing all energy on trying to pinpoint the exact date based on the signs? What does that tension tell us about how these sources suggest we should live?
That's a deep question arising directly from your material, something for you to consider.
That's it for this deep dive.